let's talk some trades that could happen before the deadline instead of you focusing on my picks, Brady. Allen Robinson of the Chicago Bears. I don't know if you know this. He is actually still on the Chicago Bears. I'm not sure Matt Nagy knows it. I'm not sure Justin Fields knows it. This guy, all he wants to do is play for a good quarterback. And these are, by the way, from Cody Benjamin's article, 10 trades that should happen before the trade deadline. Allen Robinson was going to be a free agent. The Bears knew he didn't want to be there. Franchise tagged him anyway, which is their right under the collective bargaining agreement, and brought him back. And now they're just not using him in the passing game. I mean, why would they not try to get like, they don't look like a good team, and they could probably get a pretty decent pick for him.
I gotta be honest with you. I really don't understand why we don't see more action during this time of year in the NFL when the trade deadline hits. It does seem like at this point, given the circumstances, like what would you rather him do? Just walk off into free agency and move on, tag him another year. So why not?
And because the best pick you can possibly get is a compensatory pick at the end of the third round.
Compensatory third round pick.
Right.
And so, look, if you're betting for that and you've shopped around, you don't think you can find anything close to that, then it makes sense, right? I mean, that's the reality of the NFL. I think we probably would see a little more action if the compensatory picks, or there was a different formula for the compensatory picks. But as far as teams you could go to, I think you put in the rundown like the Ravens, that might make some sense.
The Ravens were actually Cody Benjamin's choice for where they could potentially go, for where Robinson.
Right. I think you could throw down any team that's in contention, that's looking for an extra little boost. Like I always think the Chiefs, only because they've got Tyreek Hill, yes they have Travis Kelce. I feel like they're like best suited when they have that kind of reliable like other third option. And I'm not saying that that's the reason for their struggles this year. It clearly seems like Patrick Mahomes is pressing. There's been sometimes he's forced the ball. There's been some unlucky stuff. I mean, passes that should have been caught that were tipped that weren't. But you add him to that mix, and I think you've got a great dynamic of three different guys that you don't have to be as two-dimensional and have to run the football. You can have three guys who can go take the top off the defense or make plays for you or win matchups. So that'd be another team I'd throw into the mix because I think they're aggressive and they can. The Ravens, the Chiefs. I mean, outside of that, I mean, maybe you'd say the Steelers, although that's not really their style. And I think when you look at what they already have with Claypool and Johnson and some of the other pieces, Freiermuth at tight end, I don't know if it's a huge necessity for them. So This is one where, like, I think if you're Matt Nagy and, as who is right now, may not even coaching this week with COVID, you're probably more worried about your job security. And so you trade away a guy like this. How does that help you down the stretch where your team looks abysmal? Your quarterback's playing at the worst of any starting quarterback right now. And it's not all on Justin Fields. He's a rookie, but they're sure as heck not putting him in a position to succeed. So I would think like you need all the talented players you can get, even though it doesn't seem like they're trying to get him the football. It doesn't seem like he's excelling there right now, at least with what they're trying to accomplish. So this is a tough one to think that he'll go anywhere, especially considering the compensatory pick that they would get if they just kind of let him go.
Yeah, so that's sort of the issue too. Is that you point out, like, I'm surprised there's not more action. I think it's because the trade deadline is fairly. I mean, it's not early in the year, but I mean November 2nd. I mean that's not it's in the middle of the season, and teams like the Bears who are 3-4, the Panthers 3-4. San Francisco 2-4, Washington 2-5, Philly 2-5, the Giants 2-5. Like we look at these teams objectively and say these teams are not very good, but those teams internally are either saying, okay, we can make a playoff push, and somehow it's realistic because the 7 seed in the NFC is Minnesota right now at 3-3, so it is realistic. And also to your point about Matt Nagy and job security. If you're Nagy and you're trying to save your job, or Ryan,
are you saying Nagy or Nagy? I can never. It sounds like you're saying Nagy. Is it Nagy?
Nagy?
Nagy? I think it's Aggie, like an Aggie.
I think it's Matt Nagy. Nagy.
Are you saying Eggy?
As in Matt Nagy.
Can we get a proper pronunciation from Debo? I'm just curious because it looks like it's spelled Nagy. You seem to be saying Nagy.
Matt Nagy.
Like it's spelled Neggy.
Like yay or nay. Nagy. Matt Nagy.
Do you ever hear anyone say nay, by the way?
No, but the more we're saying this, the more it's weirding me out. It's like one of the, like it's like an imaginary.
I'm just saying, I feel like it's pronounced Nagy, but you say Nagy.
I might say it both ways, different times. I don't know. I wouldn't.
It always hits me weird every time I hear it.
I'd
be curious to see what the listeners think. Yeah, because you say it different than anyone else in the face of the planet.
Debo has just chatting me. Is it Matt Nagy or Matt Nagy? Why? I mean, what if
That's what I already asked.
I don't even know which one's right and which one's wrong. This is like
That's what I'm asking.
Have we talked with you about Breach and Tyrann Mathieu?
No.
Have you ever heard Breach say it?
How does he say it?
I'm going to play it for you because I have it on my soundboard.
Drop? Yeah.
Yeah. Ready?
Tyrann Mathieu.
Mathieu? I mean, what? Mathieu? Does he always say it that way?
He also says Belichick. Like he doesn't call him Bill. He calls him.
So Nagy is like everyone calls it Nagy. You say Nagy.
Yeah, that's at least like reasonable.
Tyrann
Mathieu. Is that a
Southern insane. Mathieu? But so like what's happening?
Mathieu's odd.
We made this like such a thing that like several times both Ryan Wilson and I have gone on the radio spots and said Mathieu because we've heard it so many times because we played the bit. Anyway, the Bears coach.
Text Slack. I just want you to. I found Nagy talking about Nagy.
So this is the thing.
See now, Debo's saying it.
Well, I'm reading. Rick Morrissey tweeted. This was January 12th, 2018. Please, everyone, especially sportscasters, stop calling the new coach Nagy. He told the Sun Times it's pronounced Nagy.
So it is Nagy. You're right. It's not a Southern
the only
accent.
people who
Nagy.
Matt Nagy. Like that, I'm saying it right. Exactly. The only two people on the planet saying it right are me and Matt Nagy. Is what's happening.
That's crazy to me. So it's not even. It should be pronounced very different than how it's spelled.
Yeah, I think that tweet that Debo found, good call, Debo. I think that tweet that Debo found may be why I say it that way, or I've heard him talk about it because I see it. It looks like Matt Nagy, but it's Matt.
We worked out together back when he was an Arena League quarterback.
Really?
For the Columbus Destroyers. Yeah, there was a guy named Greg Fry, who was a former Ohio State quarterback that I worked out with a little bit. I think he played in the USL for a minute. And I remember we went down to Bexley's Field to go through some drills. And I think I had just maybe gotten in the NFL or drafted or whatever, but I was back home. I just wanted to get a workout in. I wanted to see Greg. And I remember throwing with him, and I was thinking to myself, like, God, I'll be able to play forever. Because, in football, if this is what, an Arena League quarterback looks like I'll be able to play forever if I want to play in the Arena League. But he didn't say much. Like, wasn't an overly nice guy. Like, kind of just, went about throwing and stuff. I don't know. I could have been a senior in high school or college, or had just been drafted. I can't remember when, but I do recall that day. It wasn't really overly windy, but it was kind of windy. I don't know.
Were you? Was it windy enough to carry your sailboat across the lake?
We were over in Bexley, which is downtown Columbus. All right,
it was a Tommy Boy joke because this.
Quit playing with your dinghy. No, yeah,
it's not a dinghy; it's a sailboat. I'll come over there and rip your head off. Anyway, but to the larger point, this show's off the rails.
Can we move on to Xavier Howard and the Dolphins, or like another team? We're like, but I was going to say forever.
But my point was, if you're Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, you know that you're on the hot seat. And if you start trading away players, it shows that you're admitting a mistake and you're saying we're not good enough to make we know we're not good enough, and ownership
they're saying we're not worthy.
That's just Wayne's World, but yes.
I
haven't seen that forever. Anyway, but the point being is you can't trade off these guys because then ownership, because you're playing, you're coaching and GMing.
Yeah, you're coaching for your job right now. Yeah,
right.
100%.
Right.
You're right.
And
you're taking a long time to make this point, but you're right. You've been saying it for like 2 minutes now.
Well, that's because you keep interrupting me about pronunciations in Wayne's World. So
you can't help it. It's just but we found out it's Nagy.
That's yes, I knew it was Nagy, but at any rate, the teams that I think would make sense for Allen Robinson that can't happen because of the standings and where Chicago sits. New Orleans would make a ton of sense. Like the Saints, from a fit perspective, and they're getting Michael Thomas back, so not as huge a deal. San Francisco could use him.
Are they getting him back?
Maybe. The Green Bay Packers could use him, but obviously the Bears are not going to make a trade with the Green Bay Packers.
I don't know if I agree with that though, too. I mean, I get that, but I mean, so what? They're going to bring on Allen Robinson. I mean, and once Devontae Adams comes back, they give him 1,000 targets a year. So I think what they've got right now, they've got working for them. I mean, Devontae's on the COVID list. So it is what it is.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm just saying he would be. I don't think that trade would happen. I'm just saying the Packers are consistently mentioned as a team that could use an additional wide receiver. Maybe you like Valdez-Scantling, maybe you like Alan Lazard. A secondary option wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for the Green Bay Packers. There's another team I saw that could use him, and I'm forgetting now. The Colts.
Yeah, probably. I think that's a team that makes the most sense, only because they're trying to get back into it, right? Make that playoff run. They're on a much better pace. So that would make maybe the most sense of any of the teams that like aren't quite there yet, but are trying to catch Tennessee in their division and be a wild card team. I mean, the fascinating thing is just the AFC North, because no team's sub 500. Yeah. And outside of the Bengals, because I think they've got plenty there, I don't think the Browns would be looking for one either. And then you've got Baltimore, which I guess could be a potential landing destination for them. But I feel like
how do you say Bengals, by the way?
Bengals.
Bengals. No, that's the band. It's the Bengals. I think you say.
How are you saying it?
I'm catching a bang in there.
Yeah.
Bengals.
Oh, the Bengals, like bang.
It's the Bengals.
Like Joe Burrow, bang. Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase, bang,
bang,
bang, bang.
What is happening? I love it.
The Bengals.
It's not the Bengals. Bang.
It's the Bengals. It's Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase, bang.
Xavier Howard.
Bang.
We're gonna get some tweets into this one
because Debo's fantastic rundown makes some sense. I mean, even though I think their defense is actually playing better of late, that'd be one team. I mean, again, I keep throwing in Kansas City just because their defense is arguably the worst in the league, and their secondary is, has been very underwhelming with their performance. Outside of that, I mean, you could have made a case for the Bucks, right? It's a different conference. It's a team that's dealt with a bunch of injuries at the cornerback position. He's one of those talented, in the league. So that'd be a team that I think would love to load up, grab him, move on from there. You can even make the case for the Saints, the team you mentioned, but I think opposite of Lattimore, I mean, they drafted Paulson Adebo. He's done okay. You could always use more depth there, and a guy like that there to have two lockdown corners. I think that helps out their rush too. So there's a number of teams that fall into that category. But I mean, probably the last one too.
A team that would make sense. Bill Barnwell and I talked about this on his podcast, but I don't
49ers.
think the Titans.
Yeah, but that defense is getting better too. Like, I'm not giving up on that group. I think they've started to play their best football the past 2 weeks, and even defensively. I would think that, look, the Seahawks. You can make the case for the 49ers. I think they could utilize him too. Like, defense just hasn't been the same. So there's a number of teams like that could use a top cornerback in this league. So again, it just depends on like what you're willing to give up.
Cody has them giving up a 2022 third round pick and a 2023 fifth round pick for Xavier Howard. That's not enough. I think he would cost.
Yeah, because it's really a third and a sixth if you look at how teams look at it, right? Because they look at a fifth round pick 2 years from now as a sixth round pick in this upcoming year.
Yes. I think it would cost that's not going to get you Xavier Howard. It's a good article by Cody. I'm just telling you that's not going to be enough. I think Barnwell and I were talking about maybe even a first round pick for Xavier Howard if he swapped with the Titans. Brandon Cooks. Surely the Texans will trade somebody, right? I mean, by the way, Brandon Cooks has been secretly traded 17 times this year, like in his life.
He's been traded 3 times in his career?
Drafted by the Saints, traded by the Saints to the Pats, traded by the Pats to the Rams, traded by the Rams to the Texans.
Rams to the Texans.
Yeah.
So this will be his 4th time. I'll tell you this much, man. When he's healthy, he's effective. He's quick. He's got good hands. Not the biggest, but there's something to be said for you if you're traded 4 times. Like, you can be like, oh, well, you're used goods. No one wants you. It's like, no. You're so valued, like you don't get cut. Like, teams trade for you, and teams are willing to trade for you again. I mean, it's impressive. So he could fit in a lot of different places. I mean, God, put him back in New England. I mean, they could use a guy like that who could take the top off of defense. I think his skill set fits to what Josh can do with him underneath to give him some catches to then complement downfield passing. But he'd be a good fit there. he'd be a good fit. You know, I think obviously the Packers is kind of who we have down as one of their teams, which seems to be a popular team. I'd love to see him Kyle Shanahan's offense personally. I think that'd be really neat.
They could use some help at wide receiver. Kyle Shanahan decided to just put Brandon Ayuk in the doghouse this year. He's just apparently, I mean, according to Chris Collinsworth and Al Michaels, they explained that Kyle was, quote, frustrated with Brandon Ayuk so far. So maybe they could use some help. But again, if you're, you know, I mean, the Texans should be trading people. Obviously, they're 1-6. I don't know if San Francisco is necessarily squatting on enough draft capital to go out and add more wide receivers when that's not really their biggest problem. But I agree he would be a good fit there. Does Tampa need to? I mean, I know they have Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown loaded the position, but as good as they are, Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller. I mean, is there any reason for them to add more depth at the position and just really like super team this thing?
No, I mean, the Panthers are the team that I think I'd look at if I was them. Now, granted, you might be trying to give up draft capital for Deshaun Watson. That's a whole other story, which we haven't got to him yet. But I just kind of look at it and think like I'm looking at rosters that seem more depleted. The Dolphins would be an interesting one too, only because you've got some guys after this year who will be moving on. I mean, they've invested in the draft. A guy like Jalen Waddle, obviously, and you still have Gesicki and Mac Hollins, other players who've stepped up, but like kind of assume Parker's probably going to be gone. And so, you know, there's maybe a thought that it would make some sense there. But again, quarterback is paramount to all of that. And if you haven't have that figured out, then, you know, you probably want to focus on that first and save up your draft capital there. So that's the hard.
I mean, hey, if you're the Panthers or Dolphins, what you do is you call about Brandon Cooks, and then you know what, you listen, Big Jack. Just go ahead and throw Deshaun in there too. We'll give you a couple more first rounders. Don't worry about it.
It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea.
If I'm trading for Watson, give me Cooks too. Do you think Watson?
The problem is like the Texans need him. You know, I mean, like they're like, who would be a team that could use a wide receiver? The Texans.
The Texans.
They could use it well.
Well, the Texans could use a lot of things.
And Tyrod Taylor's coming back. So
who gets traded first? Nick Foles or Deshaun Watson?
Watson.
Oh,
I think Philly's the team that's quiet that you need to keep an eye on, right? Like they moved on from Flacco and they had Minshew there, which if you think about it was kind of brilliant because they got Minshew for a 6th-round pick. They then trade They trade Flacco and they get back a conditional 6, could be a 5th. So they kind of won out on that one. And now you look and you go, all right, they have 3 first-round picks. I don't know that there's any team better suited to take a swing at this. Literally in 1 year, offer that to the Texans, which if you're trying to rebuild, which they are, in 1 year, you could have 3 top 15 picks as it looks right now. That's pretty enticing. And you know Howie Roseman better than anyone else who will make them conditional picks. So if anything happens with Deshaun, you know, maybe those aren't necessarily going to Houston. But the reality is you could just have one miss on a draft in order to get Watson and to try to figure that out. Because I don't feel like the Eagles are a rebuild. I think they've got a lot of good pieces on that team. So I think that's the team to keep an eye on.
2 things on that. One, John McClain has reported, and we can't know this for sure, and certainly his mind can change, that Deshaun Watson said no to the Eagles. I mean, I don't see how, if you're Deshaun Watson, you can
say no to a team wants to trade for you, right? Yeah.
I mean, went out of Houston, bro. You better be willing to take more than 2 destinations. I mean, what are we doing here? But 2, the interesting thing about the Eagles trading for Watson would be that if you're Philly, part of your selling point to the Texans is, hey, if you trade him to us, it means the Dolphins don't immediately get better. And we're giving you the Dolphins pick. And that thing might be 1st overall or 2nd overall, or 3rd overall. So it certainly would be some, I mean, if I'm Houston, I'm definitely listening to Philly calls. I'm very surprised at the idea that Deshaun Watson would say no to Philadelphia. That's a weird one. Nick Foles, what would be a landing spot for Nick Foles?
That's a tough one. I don't know.
Saints?
I mean, why? I mean, what's the purpose? You drafted Ian Book. They obviously felt comfortable doing that. They've still got Taysom Hill. I'm not sure what purpose outside of like for injury reasons. I mean, maybe Philly would look at it if they feel like they don't have enough depth or they're not wild about Gardner Minshew.
How about
bring
Pittsburgh?
Him back again?
How about the Steelers?
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, I think Ben's fine, and I think they feel good enough about who they have in Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins. I don't see what the payoff is unless you've got a real need. I mean, I don't know, maybe San Francisco. I mean, Lance isn't ready. He's hurt anyway. And it seems like Kyle Shanahan's frustrated with Jimmy Garoppolo, which is like, dude, he just got back from an injury and he was playing in like a torrential downpour. Like, could cut the guy some slack a little bit. You don't have another option. So unless you think Nick Foles is going to come in there and light the world on fire, I'm not sure that makes a ton of sense. So I don't know. It's hard.
Also, I mean, like, look, I don't want to like bash Nick Foles or anything here, but I mean, the Super Bowl run's amazing, and that was an incredible. And he had the 1 year it was like 28-3, or the touchdowns and interceptions. But like, other than those 2 years, and the Super Bowl run was like a 5-game stretch. I mean, it hasn't really worked out for teams starting Nick Foles. So maybe cooler Jets. All right, that'll do it.
I think if you saw Houston move on from Desean, maybe Houston would be willing to just have another guy down there. Davis Mills has struggled a bit. Tyrod Taylor's coming back, but maybe that would make some potential sense. I don't know. It's tough because I just don't really see the need that much right now.